Welcome back to the Thunder and Lightning Show. This is part 2 of our video. In part 1 we talked about the SSPX, Church Militant's attack on the SSPX and things that were overshadowed because of that. Now, one thing that was breaking news, I guess it would be breaking news, and it was big news, was Rorate Chaley. They posted on a blog, it was a list of questions, a questionnaire sent by the CDF. I actually talked about it in one of my videos.
Did you print it out?
No, I did not.
I will get it right now, so keep
talking. And in this questionnaire, Rorate Chaley, well, I'll just say Rorate's reaction to it, and I don't know if you noticed, I don't know if you've seen this or not, but Rorate said that they were concerned about it. I don't know if it's a man or a woman that runs the website, but they were concerned about it because they had like sources saying that it was going to be an attempt to shut down Benedict XVI's Summorum Pontificum that he wrote in 2007, which says that any priest at any time can say the Latin Mass. And basically with Summorum Pontificum, you've seen the Latin Mass grow substantially, and Latin Mass orders like the FSSP and Institute of Christ the King, they're under the bishops. The bishop gives them permission to have churches and say the Latin Mass in that diocese. Now with the bishops, some of them have restricted the Latin Mass a lot.
Yeah,
probably most of them. I don't know
if it's near half or greater than half or less than half. I don't know.
But I think with the more traditional priests that you see in most of the dioceses, I think more of them would want to say more Latin Masses. That would be my guess. But the bishop has some say over that, and
as we
pastoral
discussed,
concern.
Yeah, pastoral.
Now I've sort of made my opinions known and saying like, yeah, I'm a little bit concerned. And it seemed like the target would be diocesan Latin Masses would be shut down first, if it even happens at all, and leaving the Institute of Christ the King and the FSSP for the bishops to permit in their dioceses, and the SSPX would do their thing. So I don't know, do you want to maybe read off a few of the questions? Or
well, let's just talk about this in general, what's going on here. So if you remember, as I said, our viewers are very intelligent, they have tremendous memories. If you remember back to 2007 when Summorum Pontificum came out, and if you read that document, and it may have come with the corresponding document that came with it, which was Universae Ecclesiae, I think that was the document that came out with Summorum Pontificum, and it said, okay, here's this return to the old Mass, the old Mass strikes back, and I'm going to do this. Now I want two things to happen. One is, this old missal is not frozen in amber, and I want some enrichment of the new missal coming into the old missal. Like we could get new saints and new prefaces, which, by the way, just happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. Okay, and then and vice versa. He wanted the old missal to enrich the new. And what were those practices? Well, I think you could say like prayers at the foot of the altar, last gospel, the real offertory prayers instead of that fake Jewish table blessing that's in the new Mass. Maybe the preface of the Holy Trinity used every Sunday. I don't know. So those gestures, genuflections, keeping the fingers together, all that stuff should come into the new Mass. And then the other thing that the Pope wanted, whether you call this the second thing or the third thing there, is he said, we'll do this 3 years, and then I want everybody to report back and let me know how this whole thing's going. So nothing happened after 3 years, and so nothing happened. There were no new saints. There was no prefaces. There was no explicit things going on, and there was no feedback with the survey. So now, finally, here in April 2020, they sent out a survey to all these diocesan bishops. So that's the background there.
Yeah, and so Ryan, I wanted to get your thought on like how urgent of a situation this is. I know a lot of people were really panicking. I actually, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do if a diocesan Latin Mass gets shut down? Where can I go? What can I do? So what was your reaction to that?
Well, if you remember, 3 years ago, we went through all this stuff before. But there was a rumor that Pope Francis was going to squash Summorum Pontificum. and everybody got all worked up. It was reported by, I think, LifeSite or Rarate at that time. You can go and look this up. The internet never forgets anything.
Yeah, it was 2017, I think.
Okay, 2017. Everybody was slitting their wrists. They were about ready to jump off a building. The Pope of Accompaniment is going to destroy the old Mass. And it turned into a big nothing burger. Nothing happened. Father Zulsdorf investigated. He said, nobody knows anything about this in Rome. And it turned out the whole thing was fake news. Okay? Now here we go again. It's like every year there's like they're bored and they're like, let's send out more fake news about him suppressing the old Mass. Maybe it's some loser who's sitting there who hates the old Mass and he's like, I really want to get rid of this old Mass. Let me call somebody and give an anonymous tip that the old Mass is going to go away. Maybe it's that. I don't know. But to me, this is a big nothing burger, and I don't think anything's going to happen. Because, you can't, I just don't see how you can put this genie back in the bottle after everybody has fought for 40, 50 years to try to get this Mass back. And now if the Pope thinks that he can just get rid of it with the stroke of a pen or whatever and restrict this thing.
Well, I think it can be a little bit dangerous to get to that point because you're like, oh, what will I do if this happens? And it's like, oh, well, you should probably be focusing on your spiritual life now in the present as opposed to worrying about what's going to happen in the future. Because, look, I mean, here's the thing. If the Pope does cancel all Latin Masses, then you'll just get an SSPX church. Like, all the FSS priests will go SSPX. Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, here's the thing, though, is if you're worried, go pray Compline in the Benedictine Rite, Psalm 4, Psalm 90. It's you who dwell in the shelter of the Most High, say to the Almighty, my Lord, my rock, my refuge, etc., etc. You will not trip over a rock. The angels will bear you up. 10,000 may fall at your side, but you it will never approach. His faithfulness is buckler and shield, etc., etc. You don't need to worry about this. Like, making all these plans, our Lord, in this book, the Holy Bible, our Lord says, don't even worry about tomorrow, because don't worry about what you're going to wear, because the Almighty has the Father has every hair of your head numbered, and you can't change the color or the quantity just by worrying about it. So relax. And similarly, this whole Summorum Pontificum gate and all these worries, relax. I mean, look, the Mass is canceled. Can it get any worse than this?
Exactly.
I mean, you don't have any Mass. You can't even, your best bet is to just live stream it. So, I mean, what's going to happen if they do restart the Mass? Again, I don't know if I don't know if we're going to get the Mass this year. I'm not, as bad as these bishops are, we might not have the Mass in 2020, period. Okay, keep that in mind. If the Mass does come back, are they going to restore the obligation to attend? They'll probably say, like, probably not. You'll say, like, well, I'm afraid of the corona. Well, then you don't need to go to Mass, which means you can sit at home and watch your old Mass on TV. So, I mean, I don't know. This thing is, people are just getting all, blown out of proportion about this. And let's just wait a little minute here and show some stability. Be adults and not be like a 3-year-old who dropped, your favorite toy and it broke or whatever. And now you're just in tears and inconsolable. Nothing's happened yet. Pray. That's what you can do. Pray.
Yeah, I think with the Masses coming back, there's some dioceses that have opened up. I think it's going to get really ridiculous for bishops, and people are going to go to different dioceses. It's going to get nuts, but that's my prediction. But anyway, do you want to talk about the question? I don't think we have to go over every single one.
We don't have to, but I do want to.
If you want to mention a few of them, yeah.
I think that you're on to something when you said that you think that the Pope might be trying to get rid of the diocesan priests saying the old Mass. And what's interesting here is that maybe the SSPX might have convinced the CDF or the CDW something here, and that's namely this. The position of the SSPX, and my opinion too, and a lot of traditionalist opinion, is that the new Mass is a different rite than the old Mass, okay? So it has a different code of rubrics, a different calendar, the ritual is different, and so therefore you can't say that the new is the ordinary form and the old is the extraordinary form. I mean, even a mainstream bishop like Bishop Schneider criticized this stupid idea that came from Pope Benedict, who said that the new Mass is the ordinary form and the old Mass is the extraordinary form. When he rightly pointed out the new Mass is the aberration, the new Mass is the one where you have these strange rituals of lay people distributing communion in the hand. It's sacrilege upon sacrilege, novelties of lay people in the vernacular proclaiming readings, etc. And that's what's extraordinary. That's by exception and ought to be by indult. Okay, so maybe the Pope realizes this, and SSPX has convinced him that Summorum Pontificum, where it says that there's two forms of the same Roman rite, is wrong, and there's actually two different rites of Mass. So therefore, that the new rite is it's this creation that came from a laboratory benchtop, where you had Protestants and Freemasons and Bunini, and they're like, let's put a little vernacular in it. Let's have communion in the hand, and everybody comes out, and it's a Frankenstein monster, and it gets up, and all the people are frightened, and they just run in fear. Ah! So the attendants of the Novus Ordo just went whenever it came out. But that's a possibility there. But here are some of the questions. So they asked about what's going on with the old rite in your diocese. If it goes on in your diocese, is it a true pastoral need, or is it promoted by a single priest? I mean, it seems like what they're getting at there is that if there's only one priest saying it, then you really don't need it. To me, that seems so odd, because it's like, well, if there's only one priest, then you need even more of it because you only have one priest. So
yeah, that question in particular is what I was like, oh, that kind of sounds a little bit concerning.
That's strange.
Yeah.
In your opinion, are there positive or negative aspects to the use of the extraordinary form? Are the norms and conditions established by Summorum Pontificum respected? Does it occur to you that in your diocese the ordinary form has adopted elements of the extraordinary form? This is why I don't think that this is a totally bad survey, because if they ask a question like that, why would they ask that unless they think that, like, you would have to come from a very strange perspective where you would think that, like, old Mass rubrics or practices were intrinsically evil and you should get rid of them.
Yeah,
or you think that it's a different rite and there should be no mixing of rites, as Ecclesia Dei Commission at one time said.
Well, I think with two of those questions, they're very neutral, but I think the one you just asked about the extraordinary form, the ordinary form adopting elements of the extraordinary form, I can see that, because I don't know, I guess it's a perspective I have from the modernists on Twitter that say, I hate ad orientem Mass, I hate Latin. Like, I mean...
Well, if you don't like it, don't attend. This is what they say about abortion. If you don't like abortion, don't get one. And so, I mean, abortion is a crime against humanity that cries to heaven for vengeance. I don't think maybe you could say that the new Mass... Well, the new Mass might be a crime that
depending on how it
cries to heaven for vengeance. Yeah, depending on what's going on, the level of sacrileges. I mean, let's be serious here. If you say that old Mass according to the book, you could, and it's in Latin, ad orientem, with no hand communion, there's no lay people, then it's not a sacrilege.
Oh, you mean the new Mass?
Did I say the new?
Yeah,
I meant the new Mass.
Yeah, the new Mass.
If you say the new Mass according to the book in Latin, ad orientem, no lay people, no hand communion, then it's certainly not a sacrilege. It's pleasing to God. It's still a new rite. It might not be as pleasing as the old. I don't know. But as far as the sacrificial character, it would be the same. But as far as the content of the prayers, it would certainly be lacking. But with that being said, that's what I can say about that.
And that could be a neutral question. With my skeptical mind, that's how I interpreted it. But if you want to continue.
Question 6. For the celebration of the Mass, do you use the Missal promulgated by Pope John the 23rd in 1962? I don't know, like, what are they asking here? Are they asking about, do you use that Missal every day? Or are they asking, hey, do you even like that 62? Have you started to use the 1954 Missal?
Yeah, that could be a very neutral question.
Why they're asking that particular question. Maybe, it seems like at face value they're asking the bishop, do you say the old Mass?
And which one do you which missal do you use? And
well, I mean, I think they would anticipate that they're using the 62, but I
most
mean,
of them do,
wouldn't it be
yeah.
hilarious if a lot of bishops responded and said like,
No,
"Oh yeah,
55
I
is
don't
great.
use the 62, I use the 54 because the 62 is garbage." You know? Oh, that'd be interesting. Question 7. Besides celebration of the Mass in the old rite, are there other celebrations, for example, baptism, confirmation, marriage, penance, unction of the sick, ordination, divine office, Easter, Triduum, funeral rites, according to the liturgical books prior to Vatican Council II? That's probably yes in every diocese. Has the motu proprio Summorum Pontificum had an influence on the life of seminarians in the seminary of the diocese and others in formation houses? That's an interesting question because there's a lot of bishops in a lot of seminaries who don't want their seminarians to be exposed to Summorum Pontificum in the Old Mass, which seems to me to be a schismatic attitude. Because in most seminaries, they're even exposed to like the Byzantine Rite and the Maronite, but they don't want them, if what Pope Benedict said is true, that there are two forms of the same Roman Rite, then you have to have seminarians learn both of them and be exposed to both of them. Otherwise, you got to say Pope Benedict is wrong, there are two different rites, the old rite is bad, and we are not going to have anything to do with that. And if you do that, then you've just cut yourself off from tradition, and you're a schismatic at that point in time. If you say, I don't want anything to do with that old rite of the Mass.
Yeah, and that could be a very neutral question. I just want to say for reference, I've talked to a few seminarians, Novus Ordo seminarians, and all the few Novus Ordo seminarians I've talked to, they're like, oh man, I love the Latin Mass.
Yeah.
And they're going to be saying a Novus Ordo, and they understand that predominantly, but they're like, man, I love Ad Orientem, like I love tradition. Like, it's
Yeah.
so that question, the answer to the question should be yes. Everything should be Latin. Like everything in the seminary they should teach the traditional. Like they shouldn't teach them any modernism. Unfortunately, that's going on, and they should do a further investigation of seminaries. But that's kind of a divergence from this topic.
Well, what's interesting there is that I think this is natural because if you look at the Novus Ordo and compare it to the Old Mass, if you look at the Old Breviary and compare it to the New, somebody who loves the liturgy and wants to be a priest, I think if they encounter the New Mass versus the Old, they're going to say the Old, oh yeah, that's like the real Catholicism. That's the real deal, and that's the way it ought to be. And then they look at the Novus Ordo as like a letdown, or it's something that you do for pastoral reasons, There's very few men, okay, let's just think of this analogy, like you think you want to be in the military, right? So you want to be in the military. Now do you go out there and say, well, I want to really join a lax branch of the military where they shoot crappy guns and they only do training 1 day a week, and a lot of people they're like obese, fat, they can't run like more than down to the end of the block. They're smoking cigarettes, eating donuts. Our battle plans are, if somebody attacks, we just raise the white flag and say, we surrender. So now everybody who wants to join the military goes in, they're like, oh, yeah, I want to fly jets and shoot missiles and blow stuff up and climb walls and swim in alligator-infested waters and learn about spy satellites and all this stuff, okay? So similarly, a seminarian doesn't go in there and say, well, can't wait to sit down and pray the new breviary, reciting it, and have a new Mass celebrated facing the people where we hold hands and sway back and forth and we all receive communion in the hand and we play our guitars and sing Marty Haugen and David Haas songs where we're all like Snoopy from the Charlie Brown Christmas as we play our guitar, and there's like none of those people. Maybe there are.
There's
maybe,
a few.
Maybe they go to the homosexual seminary. I don't know, but I hope they don't. I hope they're not homosexuals. I hope they're just on the charismatic side, maybe.
I think there's a few. Even charismatics are good in some cases.
They are. I'm not condemning the charismatics. Maybe they're the ones who want to play the guitar or whatever. But I don't even think the charismatic is not interested in the 20-minute new Mass. That's like, that's all over, in and out in 5 minutes. That was nice. What's for dinner? Sweet. Gonna go watch the Sunday night game. Glad Vespers was over. Any longer than 10 minutes. Whoo, I gotta have another cigarette after 10 minutes. So there's like, if you want to give your life to the church, you're going to be celibate for this. You're giving up a normal life. And do you really want to do this in some cheap, watered-down method? And that's where I think this comes in. Even the diocesan seminarians, they know this is a real vocation that you're making sacrifices for. And therefore, you want a nice liturgy. You want the best for God. And you're not going to settle for just this slapdash, haphazard, something thrown together in a pizzeria at the last minute, which is the new Mass and the new breviary. So the old Mass has an effect, has an attraction on seminarians, no matter how much they get exposed to it in person. Because after all, thanks to the phones, everybody can see the old Mass online. Everybody can see what the Russian Orthodox are doing. And so
you can download a Latin Mass missal.
Unless you hate Vatican II. Oh, you liberals. I know none of them watch this show. But if they did, if you are a true liberal and you really believe in the spirit of Vatican II, you need to understand that Vatican II said that the Orthodox are like still in the church or some weird thing, and you need to have a respect for their liturgy. So you need to understand that they're going to be, when you go to an Eastern Orthodox liturgy, they're going to be wearing nice vestments, and it's going to be 3 hours long, where they just repeat, Lord have mercy, 60 times, and they're making all these signs of the crosses and bowing and saying how unworthy they are. And if you don't believe in that stuff, then you have set yourself against Vatican II. You are outside the church if you don't respect what the Eastern Orthodox do. So in a similar way, you must respect what the Catholic traditions are and what they do in the Old Mass, where they have these long liturgies in a language that you don't understand, namely Latin. And there's all these genuflections, and communion is distributed differently. You need to respect that, and because Vatican II said so. So that's the bottom line with that. Last question here. 13 years after the motu proprio Summorum Pontificum, what is your advice about the extraordinary form of the Roman Rite? And I hope the bishops reply and say, it should be the ordinary form of the Roman Rite. Hopefully that's how they respond. I'm sure some will.
Yeah, Archbishop Sample in particular. I hope he really shares his honest opinion.
Yeah.
Archbishop Sample of Portland, Oregon, is one of the particularly tradition-friendly bishops.
Bishop Schneider, who will say it should be the ordinary form of the Mass. Yeah.
So do you have any closing thoughts? I guess what I would say, and then maybe you can give your thoughts, is that, like, based on our conversation, I don't think that you really have to worry too much about it. I mean, we're going to figure stuff out. We'll find a way, even if they do cancel diocesan Latin Masses, we'll figure something out. But until then, it hasn't actually happened yet. So don't worry about stuff that hasn't happened.
Yeah.
And we'll be fine.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. Don't worry about it. And they'll be... This really, think about priests. They're going to be the ones who will think about this problem. I mean, if they're Novus Ordos or whatever, they'll say, well, I'll just have a private Mass in the evening, and it'll be, behind not necessarily locked doors, but, bring a friend, and we'll do the old Mass. You'll have even more growth in the old orders, the old rite orders and monastic orders and religious orders, which are already doing quite well, because a lot of priests know if they go to the Novus Ordo Seminary, they're going to be saying the Novus Ordo Mass quite a bit. And it's like the treat that they right now have the opportunity to say the old Mass. It's a good thing for them. But if you take that away from them, you're just, again, taking away an attraction for the diocesan seminary. And the diocesan priesthood is dying. It's probably dead now. I would say there's really no future for the diocesan priesthood. Most of the vocations are going to religious orders because, as Archbishop Lefebvre pointed out, that new Mass and the new formation destroys the priestly character of the priest. They don't have an identity anymore. And you really see that. It takes almost a superhero of a man to go through the Novus Ordo Seminary and to live in the Novus Ordo parish and to say the Novus Ordo Mass. who still has that Catholic spirituality, the Catholic respect for the Mass. There's very few of them, and they have to work really hard. And those guys are few. So I just think that you're going to see, if this happens, you'll see a precipitous decline in the number of Novus Ordo seminarians again. And you really can't decline much more from what we have already before the number reaches 0.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you for
Thanks,
watching. And everyone have a great day.
See you next time.